Vacation and everything. Good evening, good evening. Before I start, are you all comfortable?
Yes.
Do you all have a drink?
Yes.
Does anyone need a wee? Okay. We are talking about ageing, so I thought it a poignant question to start with. So before we get started, I'm going to hand over to Denise to do a little bit of background and just give us a little bit of bio, a little bit of background before her. Then what I'm going to do is go through a few questions and interview her. So basically she just didn't want to stand and yar at you for an hour. So she thought she'd let me do the yarring and then make it look like she was just a really interesting person. So firstly though, thank you so much for all coming to this book launch this evening. We're really thrilled to see so many of you here, and we hope that you'll all enjoy the evening. There will be a point where I will ask you for questions, so think of some quickly. So I'll pass the mic over to Denise and tell us a little bit about yourself, Denise.
Thank you. This is my 8th book, and I've never had a book launch before. They just happen. And I was asked, are you going to do anything special this time? And I think it's really nice for me to tell you a bit about, because some of you know bits about me, but nobody hardly knows all about me. But about 5.5 years ago, I moved into Cheltenham. I was single for the first time. I'd pretty much been married all my adult life, and I didn't have a single friend. And it was really hard to move into Cheltenham, and how am I going to make friends? I went to some dance classes and nobody spoke to me, and I used to just go in the corner and cry, so that really wasn't a great start. And then I found somebody said meet-up groups, and I found one called Band Buddies. And I went to a gig at the Cotswold, and there's Jeffrey and Andrew back there, and they were my first friends. And it was just walking into the cotty is really scary, and it's will I know you? And they go we'll be the 2 old blokes near the door. So I spotted them. So they were my first friends. And then Jeffrey said, there's something happening in the brewery the following Saturday. Why don't you come down? So I did, and there was music playing, and I thought, well, he won't remember me, but he did, and he came over and he said hello, and he introduced me to Helen. And I don't think I'm going to quite be able to name check every single person in the room, but I met Helen, and Helen, I went for a walk with her, and then she said, do you want to come to a party? And it's I've been to a party since I was 17. So I went to a party, and I met Kate, and it was Kate's party. And I think I probably met others of you there. And then I joined the 45s and single group.
Free.
And that's when I met lots of people. But Dave was one of the first people that I met, and I remember meeting Pauline and Jill and some other people as well. But that's how my life was. It's just building friends and making friends and getting to know people. And then there was another group, Ladies Who Lunch sort of group. Can't remember what it was exactly called, but that's where I met Kimberly. And there was a load of women there, and I just happened to be at a table sat near Kimberly, and since then we've been friends, and we meet up regularly and we go for drinks and confide and do all that sort of stuff. So that's how I know a lot of you in the room. And then I started dating. Could write a book on that. But I met a guy, and we were just chatting, and we both realised that we're into comedy. And we're flicking through our phones, and we find out there's a 6-week course going on with Comic Sans. So this is our second date, is to go to a comedy night. He never went back to the comedy class, and I never saw him again. But that's how I met Roberta and Dan and Richard and loads of other people that aren't here. And doing comedy is effing scary. Doing it where you've got to just go with what's in your head or in your mind or whatever, and not really sort of concentrate on anything. And it was so different to anything I'd ever done. But I kept on going, and I made some really good friends. And I carried on, so I'm going to my bands and everything. And then the reason this book came about is I'd always wanted to do a doctorate. In my late 40s, mid 40s, it was I want to become a doctor before I'm 50. But I never knew what my research was going to be about. And then the years go by, and it's so hard. It's really, really hard trying to put a proposal together. And because I'm a chartered psychologist, and I got various other qualifications, you can like fast track a PhD. You do this thing called a professional doctorate. Same standard, but they just take into account previous experience. And I went to a meeting down at London University, and I'm thinking, but why would they take me on? They'd had 180 applications, they were interviewing 50, and why me? You know, I'm 61 now, I think I was still 60 at that point, but I'm 60, and why would they take me on? Anyway, they were talking to me, and I said, well, tomorrow I'm going off to do a vision quest. There's nobody from my vision quest world here, but this is how I got into buying a wood. So, vision quest, I went, that's something where you go and spend 10 days out in nature, including 4 days and 4 nights, where you're on your own with a tarp and water and a sleeping bag and a pen and a notebook, and that's about it. No food, no technology. But it was amazing. It was just me and my thoughts, and I had loads of thoughts. And I was writing poetry every day. I wrote 10 poems on one day, straight off, and they all like rhymed. It was like proper poetry. It rhymed. And I suddenly thought, this is what I want to do for my research. How do people find meaning in life? You know, you're working, you've got this meaning because of your job, and then what people do, so I came back and said, well, if they accept me, that's what I'm going to do. And my phone was switched off for another few days, and when I switched it on, there was a message that's like, you've got a place. It's like, wow, I've got a place. So this is July, I'm doing the Vision Quest, and I go off and they give me a place, and we're to start in October. And it's like, well, I can't actually, because I'm off to Nepal, because I'm back doing my solo travelling, and I wanted to go off and go to a Buddhist monastery, as you do, and spend some time just hanging out around the bars of Kathmandu. It was really good. As you did. But I also went hiking, and it's like I did this 3-day hike with this guide, and I nearly fell down the side of a mountain, and I'm thinking, this is really not what I should be doing. But anyhow, so I came back, and I'm starting this research. It's really, really hard, because you're having to sort of like do things that I've never done, and I've never done reading academic papers and whatever, but I got good at it. And then lockdown happened, and I've got loads of time, although it was all a bit scary, if we remember. But I carried on, and I made it my priority. And so like 2 years later, I've reached the point where I'm doing my Viva, and that's where they ask you like really, really hard questions to make sure that what you've written about is what you've actually written about, and nobody else did it for you. And I was saying, I want to publicise, I want to publish my stuff. I want to be in like one of the top academic journals. And they go like, right, we need to make your thesis even better. So you've passed, like you're a doctor now, but we just want you to do a bit more. It's like this, really, you know, why did I say that? But anyway, so they gave me things, I did even more. And one of the things I was doing in my research was researching the meaning of meaning, which took 3 weeks full time to write 2 sentences. But hey, but that was the good thing about doing academic research in the 60s. It's like, you know what, I've got a bit more time. I'm doing this because I want to do it, not because I want to get promoted. And then I finally complete all these sort of minor corrections, as they call them, and I start putting in proposals to academic journals, and they go like, yeah, 2,700. I go like, what? And it's, I didn't know you had to pay to go in an academic journal. I thought, well, I didn't expect to get paid, but I didn't know I had to pay. So it's like, oh, okay, so how am I going to get the message out? And that's when I decided to write a book, because I'd already written all these other books. And the last book was Find Work at 50 plus, and that one had sold really well, because a lot of people struggle to find work at 50 plus. So then I thought, right, I've had 4 publishing deals, let's go back to these publishers. Surely they'll want to publish me. No, they all turned me down, and it's like, fuck. So what am I going to do now? So then I had to approach publishing companies that I'd never worked with before. Kogan Page, they turned me down, another one, they turned me down. But Routledge said, oh yeah, we like this one, and we're going to send it out to all these academics to get their views on what you should be writing about. And they came back and go like, yeah, lovely, 4 months, you've got 4 months to write it in. And I did. And I did, and it came out a week ago. But they're a bit of a weird publisher, because I'm going like, well, when do I get my complimentary copies? And they go like, well, I'm not quite sure, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after it comes out. And I go like, seriously? Like, are they not going to be ready for me beforehand? And they go like, well, there might be, but if you want to do a launch, And by the way, you're on your own, we're not going to give you any help with it. But if you want to do a launch, I suggest that, you wait 2 or 3 weeks. So I chatted to my friend Roberta and my friend Dan, and we tried to get a date that we could all fit. And today was the day. And the books came 2 weeks before the book came out, and it's like, well, I could have done it sooner. But this is why it's my celebration, because it's like having a successful single life. What else do I celebrate? Completing my doctorate. I mean, I left school at 15, and they all thought I'd never make anything of it. Who'd have thought that I'm now Dr. Taylor? Getting the book out, which is number 8, and I turned 66 in the summer, and I own my age, because loads of people get older, and it's like, they just like to pretend that they're younger than they are, and they won't tell people their age, and I will tell anybody that asks how old I am. It's like, this is what 66 is like. And I never had a proper birthday celebration because of other stuff going on in my life. And I just thought it would be nice to invite people that have had some impact into my life. And some has been more than others, and some have been, just sort of smaller journeys along the way. But friendships are just so important, and even if we're not really close friends, I've really appreciated meeting all of you and having all of you in my life. So that's why we're here. And we thought it would be quite nice, because most of you don't know that whole story about where I got to. So that's all the background leading up into my book. And that's a scary bit where I'm going to be asked questions, and hopefully I know the answers. So here we go.
Round of applause moment, please. Top tip when you've got a microphone.
What?
Hold it near your face.
What's it doing?
You don't need it, do you? Shall I put it away?
You get the choice. With.
It helps to have it.
You help it. Okay, it's brilliant.
Was I not using it?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
We're all deaf, remember?
Yeah.
That's why I brought it. Again, old people, deaf. Hello, we have a question already from the audience. Yes, sir.
First question from a lady, because we're mostly women here. So, when did you write your first book, and what motivated you to do that?
Right, my first book, hold it properly. My first book was in 2007, and it was How to Get a Job in a Recession. And I'd been on Tonight with Trevor McDonald as the expert helping unemployed graduates get a job. And the director of the show had said, you really ought to write a book. And I go like, oh, okay, then I'll write a book. And I did get a publishing deal, and they were going to bring it out 18 months later. And I'm going like, but it's How to Get a Job in a Recession, it's like now. And so it was in December I started writing it, and I got it sold in March. I decided to set up my own publishing company because, as you do, it's like, let's just see how much more stress I can add to my life. But that had brought out a second edition, and that led to all sorts of other media work. So thanks for the question.
Denise, hi.
Hi.
When did you discover that you had a love for writing, and how did you discover that?
Well, back when I was at school, I was really a rubbish school student, because if I wasn't interested, I didn't pay any attention. So I really wasn't interested in geography, and I used to write poetry. And as a child, because I'm so old, when the moon landings came in, I remember writing my own magazine. And I did 6 copies and distributed them to people. So this is going back to, I can't remember when the moon landings were, but I was probably about 8 or something.
Yeah, 68.
69. Yeah, 69.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was 12.
I was probably 20.
Yeah, I was 12. So I've always enjoyed writing, but now I love writing. Thank you.
All right.
It was a bit later for the questions, but I like it. Don't stop on my account. Okay. Right, so I'm Roberta, and I just like holding microphones, so that's just why they brought me. So Denise, okay, a few questions that we may possibly have prepared earlier, but in order to give everyone the clearest view, your first question was, why did you write this book? I think you've covered it.
I think so.
So we can skip over that quite professionally. But the second question is really important. You've written the book, Rethinking Retirement for Positive Aging. How is retirement changing? It's 2023. What's different about it now from the way we might have perceived it before?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we want that. Let's keep it.
Well, I've been involved in doing things to do with retirement for a big chunk of my working life, and at 27 I was a welfare officer working for Royal Mail. And one of the things that I did, apart from going to see widows after their husbands had died, was to run pre-retirement seminars. And so from 27, it was always about helping people think about the non-money side of retirement. But it was always just sort of like, you know, stay healthy and, you know, find some interest in things. So that was my interest back then. What was the question? I've forgotten.
Well, basically, how has it changed?
How is it changing? Yeah, so back then, people were really keen to retire and to go to the caravan in Tenby or wherever it happened to be and spend more time with the grandchildren, and maybe they'd play golf. But they were just thinking about, you know, it was time to relax, time to wind down, time to take it easy. But also, a lot of people were getting quite decent pensions because they had index-linked pensions in a lot of organisations. How it's changed is the pensions are a lot worse, and we're living longer. So we're now living for probably about another 30 years than we were at the turn of the century, if not in the 30s and 40s. So because we've got all this extra time, it's, do we really want a life of leisure, or do we want to fill it? And what my research was finding was a lot of people, yeah, they fill their time, but it's not necessarily something that's meaningful. You know, they do a bit of volunteering and they do a bit of this and they do a bit of that, they take up knitting and they go to some groups. But if you say, but does that give you meaning? It was, what do we end? So sometimes people get meaning by going back to work. But otherwise it's just thinking about what is it that's going, given you've got more time, what is it that you want to do? And I think that's how retirement's changing. It's less about slowly slowing down and more about, I've got all this time now. What is it that's going to be great that I want to do?
This is seamless manoeuvring here with the microphone, isn't it? So it's less about slowing down, it's more about finding meaning, but your subtitle is positive ageing. It's rethinking retirement for positive ageing, as distinct from...
Okay. One of the problems that we have as people age is they are absorbing all these negative views and comments that other people have. And people are absorbing these right from a young age. And if you know, like, if when we get a bit older and we fall and people are going to start saying, like, she's had a fall, it's not, you're just like a bit clumsy and you've tripped over. So positive ageing is thinking about what are the things that you can do to love life and to live your life fully, and to look forward with a time of good things to happen rather than negative ageing. Because there's a lot of things around young men in the gym who look at men of like 40 at the gym and say, I don't know what they're doing here, you know, they're all old and past it. And if you're a 25-year-old and have a view like that, then what happens when you hit 40? Because you've got this conflict in your head. It's like, well, I've been saying all along that people at 40 are past it, so I'm past it now. So it's going through life with a much more positive view about things. And yeah, we're aging, and yeah, we might start having some pains and struggle to do certain things. But it's not just about how active we are, but it's about what is it we're doing that makes us feel fulfilled, and what is it that we're doing that makes us feel that we're contributing to wider society. Because that's one of the important things as we're aging. It's not just about us, but it's about what we can do for the wider world and giving something back.
Okay, do that. Okay. In the book, you talk about retirement with a Y.
Yeah.
It's interesting that says retirement, retirement. So I love the word, because who doesn't love a made-up word? But what does it mean, and why have you included that in the book, and what's important about it?
Okay. This is really interesting because I was talking about this with one of my American clients who said, but we spell tire with an I. It's like, it doesn't quite work. So I had to put something in the book around that. So I had this thought, while I was in the wood one day and thinking about Formula One, as I never do, but just thinking about car. I think I must have heard a fast car, and it got me thinking. And cars going fast, and they have to go and have a pit stop and change their tyres, and everything's done as speedy as they can, because they've got to get out there, they've got to go faster and faster and faster, and win the race, which sounds so exhausting. But that's how, when we're younger, we go through life. Many people, they're following paths and trying to get promoted, and the next promotion and the next promotion. Whereas if you slow down, you don't need to change your tyres. Your tread will last longer. And maybe you actually have time to look at the scenery, at what's going by, and to notice the flowers and everything else that you have. So that's why I'm thinking about retirement is, well, do you need to change your tyres? Maybe if you slow down, you don't need them. Or maybe if you're living in somewhere like Scandinavia, you have to put different tyres on, which is the change that we can have. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people will do as they go to what's traditionally seen as retirement age or in their 50s, is to think, actually, I don't want to carry on doing what I've done. I've been there, I've done that. I want to do something different now. So you're changing the tyres to do something that is more satisfying to you, gives you meaning, gives you more of a purpose than the old stuff, which is you're just on this treadmill following things like you think you should be doing. But as we all know, nobody wants to reach the point where you last legs, and then you look back and you think, but all I ever did was work. So that's why it's a time to reflect and think about, where is it that I'm heading.
I like that. So you're changing tyres to embrace a time of change, but many people are scared of change. I mean, uniquely as humans, we are terrified of change. We want to stay in the status quo. So how have you spoken to people in the book about approaching retirement when they are actually terrified of change and have a lot of fear around what lies ahead of them?
Change is scary. And I think what we need to think about is changes we've done in the past. Because we've all gone through major changes. I mean, if we think about the change that when we went up to big school, that was a big change that we went to. First job, getting married, or first long-term relationship. So we've gone through things, and some of them have worked out well, and some of them haven't, so we can learn from them. If we're thinking about making a change, then we can plan. And we don't necessarily need to do a major change. It may be a small thing. And we have to think about people to support us through it as well. Because what we want is to have the people that we love and are close to us in our life, we want them to be encouraging and supportive of what we happen to be doing, rather than going, well, don't do that because you're too old, or you're going to make a mess of it, or that's not going to work out for you. So I was chatting to one of my friends earlier about, why do we want these negative people in our lives that just tell us we can't do some stuff? So with change, it's about having a supporter. And one of the things I write about in my book is about having a reflections buddy. So that as you work through, and there's loads of exercises in the book, 88 I think altogether. So as you work through those, to have somebody that you can talk through and will encourage you, and you can each just take that little step. And for some people, it'll be great big massive steps. And you're going to embrace change. But for other people, it is scary. It is scary. So one step at a time. And it only needs to be a baby step. And trying to have a vision about where you're aiming for. But then that's not the end. Because whatever you think your life's going to be like in 5 years' time, you don't have to carry on that path. You can change your mind and do something different. Just keep reviewing and, baby steps. But remember the changes you've gone through in the past, because that's really useful when people are scared of change. And, of course, sometimes they'll work with an external coach to help them get through it.
So one of the biggest changes that most people face in retirement is they're moving from a life which has been quite prescriptive. Your timetable is prescribed. You get up every morning, you go to work, you come home, kids have grown up and left, you've paid off the mortgage. Those obligations are starting to ebb away. And if you're retiring, and if retiring means leaving the workplace and the work you've always known, what's the next step? Now, you talk about flexible working, so rather than looking at retirement as I am stopping working now, as you said, I'm going to sit at home and put my feet up. You've talked about flexible working, so it's more than a stopping, it's a shifting into a new approach. So can you talk a little bit about flexible working and how you've experienced it and how you cover it in your book?
Thank you. In the old days, people would retire, they'd get the gold watch or the gold clock, and they'd have a bit of a party, and we'd wave them goodbye, they'd go off with, you know, all good wishes and everything. And then they just felt a bit lost, you know, just what the heck am I doing now? But I'm retired. So that means that they become old. They used to become old very quickly. My dad, bless him, he was born in 1923. He's been dead a good few years now. But my dad retired on the Saturday, and on the Monday he got a phone call. He is a shoe shop manager, and on the Monday he got a phone call saying, there's this manager in Liverpool, he's not really hacking it properly. Could you go up and mentor him? And my dad spent the next 10 years going round for this shoe chain, just mentoring staff, and that gave him purpose and it kept him young, and that was, and he wasn't working every day, but that was a good thing to do. And I always think that was so good for my dad. And then later on he started selling sheds. You know, one of these guys, he'd be sat there reading the paper and phoning the bookies and, you know, doing, but he would be there to chat if somebody wanted to buy a garden shed. But both of them were flexible ones. And I think the flexible thing now is you don't want to go from full-on work, and there's lots of people, and they're working like 50, 60 hours a week, to nothing, because it's like, I know it seems a bit like a holiday, and you can get through that. So the whole, when I work with organisations, it's about seeing about how staff can work on a more flexible basis, so that they can work part-time and gradually share their knowledge back within the organisation. But you might not, I mean, obviously different ages and different things, but you don't necessarily want to carry on doing the same job that you've done before. So then you can think about doing something different, and it might not be about earning the same amount of money. And whatever choices you've made, you can change them again. So if you have decided, you know, I've just had enough, I'm just so stressed out, I just want to have like a really big holiday, and after 6 months or a year, and you're like, what am I doing now? I've done the decorating and I really don't want to go on another holiday, and I've had enough about being at home with my partner. So then there's this thing called a bridge job, and that's like going off to work at B&Q maybe. You know, a sort of a job that's less stressful, that you just go there and you do your job and you go home. And often people will go from a full-on job to something like that, where they're just treading water and deciding what is it that they want to do. And sometimes it's they want to be a silver entrepreneur and they're going to set up their own business. And sometimes, you know, they want to retrain and become an older intern. And I was reading recently about somebody, and he's now managing golf clubs, as in, you know what I mean. Yeah, just manages and puts them in the right place. So he's managing, you know, I don't even know how else to call them, you know, but
golf courses.
Golf courses, yeah, that's probably just as bad, really, isn't it? But anyway, so he went off as an intern, learning all about that, and he's now working in golf course management. Find there eventually. So there's things that we can do, but we can change our mind. But this thing about being flexible, first of all, it brings the money in so that it can enhance our pension. But it's not always about the money. It's more about doing some different things and about just getting different needs satisfied. But if, you know, I know if when I talk to people, it's like some people, they're really, really happy with the way things are going, which is great. But sometimes it's all well until it's not. And sometimes there's been a life change. So it might be with a relationship, it might be your partner, it might be with a parent dying, it might be other things that have happened in your life. And that can often cause us to think, actually, I want to do something different, but I don't know what. So then you can be flexible and you can go and get a job or go and do some volunteering, and from there decide, this is what is right for me now. But I'm always saying to people, no decision is forever. You make a decision, don't work out, change your mind and do something different. We are not stuck on one path.
Changing your mind. I like that. Attitude is a massive part of this process, isn't it? And I don't know about you lot, but I know a lot of really negative people. People who have spent their 40 years in the workplace hating every minute of it, begrudging every minute of it, feeling very frustrated. I may just be talking about myself here. Very frustrated and irritable and generally with the world. Now that isn't going to bode well for their retirement. And you have covered in your book that optimistic people, I'm taking it this is a stat that you have researched, optimistic people live longer.
Absolutely.
And obviously, historically, we will all remember this from our parents when they retired, and I'm sorry if this is the case for you, but very often people would retire and they would demise very quickly after retirement. You know, we saw it with men who were committed to their work. They would retire and within maybe 3 or 4 years, like you said, they age so quickly and bang, and they're gone. Having a good attitude, having optimism and being able to look to the future with hope is a massive part of this. Can you address that? And off script, if you have been a negative Nelly for most of your life and think the world is a shit show, how do you approach changing your mindset to grab that optimism so that as you approach retirement and these massive changes, you can do so with hope and with courage?
Oh, changing people's attitudes, that's a really hard one. But this study, there's a study by a Harvard professor called Becca Levy, and she found that people that are optimistic live 7.5 years longer than those who aren't, and that has more impact than being overweight and being unfit, because our mind is just so really important. So I always remember way back in my 20s, maybe the early 30s, and my boss saying, "You're just like Pollyanna, aren't you?" And I go like, "Yeah, I am, thank you." And clearly she'd made it as a put down, you know, because Pollyanna saw the best in everything. But life is easier, I think, if you go through expecting the best. Now, we all know people that are more negative, and they say, "I'm not negative, I'm just realistic. You know, these are the things that, you know, this thing might go wrong and everything." So nobody can change. Nobody can change anybody else's behaviour. But there are little things that you can do if you or someone you know tends to be overly realistic, more negative. And that's about keeping a gratitude journal. And people often talk about that, and I'm not sure they always do it properly. But I was in Lidl once, and the man on the checkout was going like to somebody like, "I keep a gratitude journal. Every day I say, I'm grateful that I've got a bed. I'm grateful I've got tea bags to make a cup of tea." And at some point, well, yeah, that's showing gratitude for some things. But I think it's doing more, and it's thinking more about being grateful about the people that you're in your life, and to tell the people that are in your life why you're grateful for them. And I don't think you have to do it every morning. It might be something that you like to do once a week. But it is useful to, you know, they're saying about count your blessings. And I think people who don't find it easy to be optimistic, that's one of the things to do. And just gradually, as you catch yourself, or they catch themselves, being more negative, just to say, that's that naughty voice in my head, or, you know, that's Harold or Hilda in my head, shut up. And then that's one way to approach it. But we can't change anybody else's behaviour, because people have got to want to. So if you do know somebody who is terribly pessimistic and negative about life, you could drop them hints about gratitude journals and set them up with thoughts of the day. But it's something that people have got to want to do. And then there's things that can be done.
Which slides beautifully into my next question. Relationships. I think the most optimistic person on the planet, if you're living with someone who's a what did you say? A realist? Yes, I'm not negative, I'm just a realist. You talk about the importance of a friendship MOT. So the people you surround yourself with, what is it? You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, is one of those quotes I've come across. So if you are looking to go into this next stage of life, and you are surrounded by people who are not as supportive as they could be, taking a friendship MOT, doing a reassessment of the relationships around you is important. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to ask me that one. Right. But interestingly, today I've been thinking about friendships, and I think it's important to take time just to review the people that we have in our life. And we need to think, have we got somebody that gives us fun? That we can be the silly person? Oh, bless. Because I think we all need somebody that can give us fun in our life. And we all need the person that maybe has known us a long time, and we can really, really, really be the true us. You know, because so often with people we're sort of true, but we're not always true, and we're always trying to give the more positive side of us. We don't actually want to show the darker side, you know, our feelings of despair that comes on us sometimes, depression that comes on us sometimes. So somebody that you could be truly yourself with. And then we have it's good to have somebody that helps us to develop and grow, that's encouraged us to learn more about ourselves and to try something new. In fact, something I was thinking about today, while I was looking at it, is, now, I haven't got this printed out to give to everybody, but if anybody wants one, I can email it to you. But I did something for an organisation about the Friendship MOT, and I was looking through my notes, and one of them is, well, how often do you spend time with your friends? And, you know, luckily through meet-up groups, lots of people have got lots of time to spend with their friends. But also it's about making a new friend, because if we only associate with people that we've known for years, then they've sometimes got a certain view of us that we maybe need new friends to do. And we want to think about how diverse our friendship group is. And that's one of the things I love about my comedy group, because they're from like 15 or so, aren't they? They're like really young. So I'm probably the oldest, but you've got a whole range of people, and I think it's nice to associate with people of different ages. And then people that share our interests, if we're really into golf or photography or watching music, that we've got friends to do that with. But maybe we have friends who encourage us to take up a new hobby. And I said about friends that you can laugh and feel joy with, you know, you want the happy friends. But you also want friends that live close by, because I've got friends that live a long way away, which is fine, but it's always nicer when you can meet people. So there's different areas, and I think it's always useful about having this MOT, just to make sure that you've got friendships, you've got friends that fit into these different categories. And sometimes we need to let a friend go, because they're not serving us anymore. We suddenly realise that they have taken advantage of us, and that we've always been there for them, and they've never been there for us. And maybe they're even a friend who isn't really a friend, because they badmouth us to other people, or like to make fun of us. So I think sometimes it's making sure, seeing if we've got these gaps, and filling the gaps. But it's also, actually, they're not nice friends, and we could decide that we want to confront them. Or we might just decide it's easier just to let them go. But yeah, Friendship MOT, I've got a nice little questionnaire, so just contact me if you would like one.
I'm going to slide another non-prepped question in, if you don't mind. Personally, over the last several years, I'm a bit weird, I didn't actually enter the workplace until 2022, after having 20 years off. So I was living in a retirement life for 20 years, bringing up kids, and then decided to be a woman returner at the grand age of 50-something. So a lot of my friends are online. The reason I say that, I spent a lot of time on Facebook and doing work online. So I've got a lot of friends I've never met in real life. And they are wonderful human beings. They are heart sisters. These are people I would live and die for, even though I've never actually stepped foot into a room with them. So I know it's not on here, and I don't even know if you covered it in your book, but the benefit of having friends you've never met, of internet friends in the world we live in now, and how that might influence the way we again move into this third stage of our lives.
I think following lockdown, lots of us had more friends online, because it was the only way that we could stay in touch with certain people. there's something different, I think, about friends that we have online. And I think they can be, as you said, they can be really true friends and really deep friends that we can confide in. And maybe they know different sides of us, because sometimes you could be more honest when you're just talking to people online. And I think when it's via Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp or whatever, I think that adds something rather than when it's just on words. But it's lovely to have these friends that we could do all sorts of things with. But it's still, if that was all we had, we really need some face-to-face ones. But we never know how the future's going to be. And it might be that for all sorts of reasons, we're not able to go out of the house. We become agoraphobic, or we have some health problem that means that we're stuck in. And to be able to play chess online, or to be able to, have conversations and share your hobby with them, it's a really good thing to do. So I think, there's a lot that can be gained from having online friends, but we still want face-to-face human contact with some touch.
That just literally made me think. For a day job, I work in a care home with very old people who have been retired for a very long time. And I very often talk about them coming almost full circle, that the care I need to give to these elderly people is the same care we would have given to our newborns and our small children. And I just had a thought flash into my mind as we spend years trying to get our little kids off the tablet and away from the computer, when it's very possible that the older we get, the more time we're going to spend back on the computer and staring at a screen. So the final question that you have prepared that we wanted to do, I think you've already covered about how to have a successful retirement. Is there anything you'd like to add that you haven't covered already?
I don't know how many people in the room, I haven't counted, but we could, if there's 30, if there's 40, we could all have a successful retirement that's different to other people. So it's thinking about what is it that's important to us. And there's one of the activities that's in the final chapter of the book, which is to imagine yourself 25 years into the future, or 90, and to look back. Because it's so easy to go through life being busy, doing, without really thinking and reflecting on how your life has gone. And when I work with my older clients, and sometimes they're saying, I missed the opportunity, because the years between 50 or 60 and maybe 75 are such a wonderful age to be in, because we're generally still in really good health, able to be active, do lots of different things. But when we reach, my mother's 90, so when we reach 90, she's got carers coming in, and you can't do the different things. So what I encourage people to do in the book is to imagine they're 90 and they're looking back on their life. And some of it might have gone a bit wrong, and some of it you have regrets, and some of things haven't turned out as you wanted them to turn out. But you think, you know what? But generally I'm happy with the life I had, and maybe didn't make this major difference in the world that I thought I did, but I made a difference to that person, and I'm kind to the people that I meet. And I think overall, if I'm thinking about a successful retirement, I'm a psychologist, so I do a lot about the work of Carl Jung and other psychologists like Erickson, and he talks about this thing called generativity, or my goodness, I've forgotten the other word. Anyway, it's a bit like decline, but we can go into old age just regretting everything from the past and wishing we were still young. And the best retirement and later life we can have is to think, this is just a stage of life. In my ward, I see new trees, I see old trees, we have to take down trees because of the way things are. And that's just the cycle, I think I'm into the Lion King now, it's the cycle of life. But we go through that, and at one point we will. The only thing we know for sure is at one point we're going to die. But if we're doing the things that have made us happy and have had some good impact on other people, then I think that's what successful retirement is. And we can start thinking that at any age, but as we get older, we really start thinking about it. All the people I've been working with do.
I love that. If I've done things that make me happy and I've had a positive impact on the people around me, it's a success.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just heart-wrenching. Right, that is all the prepared questions, and I did stick to prepared questions because otherwise I would have gone off piece. I've already gone a little bit off piece and you've had a little taste of it. You didn't have that all night, that would have just been wacky. Ladies, gentlemen, you've heard a lot of comments, you've heard a lot of information. Do you have any questions based on what you've heard, or indeed any questions for Denise, because she's an expert, because she's published and she's really important, that you'd like to ask about retirement for yourselves or maybe for other people? And this is the bit where you're supposed to put your hands up. Now I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see you.
Somebody hand up at the back.
Yay, there's a waving hand.
There you go, you take the microphone.
I'm curious, what do you say to people that would love to retire, whatever that looks like, but can't afford to? What do you say to them?
Thank you, and that is such a good question. I've been doing some PR work with a company, and we were on the radio, and what I was saying to the guy from this financial services company is like, but not everybody is going to retire on a massive pension. So we need to also think about the people who have got to carry on working. And truly, it's harder, because if you have to carry on working, okay, so let's just start again. If you have to, if you're unable to retire because either your state pension's not kicked in yet, or it's not going to be enough for you, and you haven't, through no fault of your own, got an occupational pension, then you're going to have to carry on earning some money. So then it's thinking about, well, what is it that I can do that suits me? So if you've been working in a job, say, that means that there's a lot of standing up on your feet, then it's about moving to a job which is a bit more sitting down so that you can carry on doing it for longer. It might be, and I'm not sure you're talking about yourself or somebody else, but sometimes when I think about people who have got very physically demanding jobs, like, you know, mechanics or engineers or postal workers, you know, I worked for the post office 20 odd years doing different things. It's then maybe in your early 50s is when you should start be thinking about a change of career, something that you could carry on doing for longer. But I appreciate that that's something that not many people are thinking about, and the government's introduced midlife MOTs to try and get people thinking about that. But then we'll have the whole thing about ageism and how hard it is to change jobs as we get older, because whatever organisations say, the 20-something that's interviewing you looks at you and you just remind you of your parent, if their parent if you're lucky, your grandparent if you're really unlucky, and you know, and you're trying to have to do something with it. So it is hard. So it's about thinking about, do I need to retrain to do something that's going to suit me better? And you know, people will retrain to do something, especially with the use of AI. There's a lot of new jobs coming out, or using technology, that mean that we can carry on working even if, you know, we've got health problems. Does that answer it for you?
Yes and no. I mean, I think for a lot of people that did plan, those plans haven't, the world's changed. So for me, there's a lot of people that are caught short. However optimistic they are as people, they are literally caught short. So I'm just wondering how you deal with that with people.
Yeah. It's a hard one. It's a hard one. So, I mean, you've got the whole money side, and it's like, do I have enough money? If I don't have enough money, how can I get some more money? So it's thinking about either working or renting rooms out. And then it's thinking about, well, how can I save some money? But it's, you know, it's a big question and everybody's different. But if you have to carry on working, it's really, I appreciate it's really hard if the work is physically demanding. So that's when it's best to look for something that's easier to do.
Any more questions?
Hi. A lot of people, when they use work, they use it as a substitute for meaning in their life. So that when you leave work, you've in a sense lost meaning and you've lost friendships. So if somebody is at the point of retirement, and they had used work as a substitute for meaning, how then would you explain to someone that they can find meaning in a different format?
Yeah, well, if I answer the question about friendships, because a lot of people, all their friends are through their workplace, and then they leave, and actually they weren't really their friends. So one of the good things is to join clubs and societies the year or so, a couple of years beforehand, just to start making more friends outside of the workplace. And yeah, a lot of people, they get their meaning and purpose from life through their work. And so they never retire because they just carry on because, well, that's where I get my meaning and purpose from. And then I end up working with them at 75-ish, and they realise that they missed out on all this time when they could have done something different. But you can get meaning and purpose through hobbies, through interests. And the approach I did with my research was not to go for huge numbers of people and number crunch, but to go for a very smaller number of people and to go very deep into how they found meaning. And I also only looked at my whole research was only on people that had been retired 2 years and more, because the first 2 years of retirement is people are all up in the air. They're just like trying to find themselves. They've just lost their they lose their identity, because who am I without my job? And when you meet people, they go like, well, you know, I used to be a plumber, I used to be a barrister. And one of the people in my book, people would say, oh, you know, so-and-so, Helen, a way of describing ourselves rather than our job. Because you know it is when you meet people and you go like, so what do you do? And you go like, oh, whatever. But we are so much more than our job, and that is not who we are. Because if you think metaphorically about stripping all the layers off, but who are you really? And it's about being that kind person that's got time for other people, because that's who people are going to miss, and that's what people want to know, that you're the authentic, honest person, not, you know, that you're working in the city earning 6 figures. I mean, big deal, but that doesn't impress most of us. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for sharing your experiences. So, one of the things I've come across, I've spoken to a few people that have retired, because when you get a bit older, you sort of mix yourself with people that retired. And I've been told about the grieving process, and that a couple of people have said that they didn't prepare themselves to go through grief of loss. Because we always see grief as losing someone special, but grief is losing something. And as you say, you've lost your job, you've lost your friends, you think they're friends. How would you advise somebody to prepare for that grieving process?
Yeah. It's really useful to think about retirement and to plan for it and to do it allowing probably a couple of years. So, I mean, you can start thinking about it 10 years in advance. So you start thinking about, well, this is something that might come up, and you begin to have chats with the financial guy to find out, you know, how the money's going to do. And then as the year, but you know, it's mainly just, do I need to save more, basically? But as the years go forward, it's really worth sort of at 10 years, thinking this at 5 years, 3 years before, and then yearly to have a review about how things are. And to think about, well, how's my health doing? You know, am I online to be a healthy retirement, or do I need to pay some attention to my health so that, you know, I'm going to perform better? What about my friendships, as we were talking about earlier? Do I need to get some friends? Because an awful lot of people I see as a psychologist are people who don't have any friends because it's all about the job, or for different reasons they haven't really got friendships. So we can start thinking about all of these things, and you can anticipate how it's going to be. But it's a bit like if somebody really close to you dies, you never know how you're going to handle it. And there are people who, they seem to be going through it fine, and then it suddenly hits them one day. So we can anticipate how things are going to go, but assume that the first 2 years are going to be a bit tricky, and it's going to be something that we really need to focus on and to concentrate on. But we can't plan because we don't know. But by knowing that there's going to be, you know, the grief cycle that we're going to go through, and we will come out of it, but it can take longer for some people.
I was wondering, you mentioned one of your books about finding work when you're over 50.
Yeah.
Which obviously when you're over 60 is going to be even harder. It's all very well saying, oh, well, I'd like to do that, but how do you then deal with the resistance that you may find, or how do you know in advance where you're going to meet that resistance? Is there a way to find your way through that?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a chapter in that book about being over 60 as well, because I was anticipating sort of that stage. Right, if we apply for jobs the way that most people apply, so you see it on Indeed or something, and you go and apply and you go through the ATS software, and it's not even seen by a human, and the chances of you getting shortlisted are entirely remote, and then you do get shortlisted and you're interviewed by somebody who's a 20-something who just looks at, you know, your grey hair and whatever, and it's like, nah, they're not going to fit in. So you have to turn it on its head as far as recruitment goes and applying for jobs, and you have to take a direct approach and to approach an organisation, and you're being much more push is not quite the right word, but you've got to go in there and sell yourself as to this is why you should have me. So you really need to understand, you know, people talk about personal brand, you really need to understand this is me and this is why you need somebody, you know, at 66 say, rather than somebody at 30, because this is all the extra that you're going to get from me. But we do have to accept that there is an awful lot of ageism out there, and however much organisations say they encourage people from different ages, they don't all, but it's growing and it's changing. And in that book there was a list of organisations, including the Nationwide Building Society and B&Q, that positively encourage older people. The other thing to think about is
Strike Nationwide off that one.
Have they changed it now?
Well, I give the personal details, but
Okay, all right then. And the other thing to think about, the whole going back to being flexible, is it's not necessarily job share, but to go in and do a more flexible work. So they're getting the benefit of all your knowledge, and you're not having to, work yourself ragged by 5 long days. Okay. Thank you.
Would you say something about when you're going into a working retirement phase, you're designing your work rather than filling gaps which already exist?
Yeah, okay. So I think the more we know what it is we want and why, the more likely we're going to be successful. And somebody said, I don't really do it anymore now, but when I used to do recruitment for organisations, and people would say, you'd say like, so why do you want this job? And they go like, well, it's not really this job, I just need any job. And it's like, well, that's a bad, and that's a black mark against them. They've got to know why they want the job. And I trained as personal branding consultant. I mean, I don't really do that anymore. It's not really where I want to go with the work stuff that I do. But you've really got to be clear about who you are and why you stand out. So if you think about going into the supermarket and there's all these jars of jam, like why would you buy that jam and not that jam? Well, that jam's cheap, but that one's got like thick cut. So you've got to think about it, and the thick cut jam, that's probably marmalade, but but that appeals to a certain sort of person. So you've got to be really clear about this is what I can offer the world, and the right organisation that fits. And this is why a lot of older people become self-employed, because it's far easier to get the work as a consultant than it is as an employee. But then you're into the whole thing about managing and having to find clients, but you don't actually need that many clients. And often organisations would be happy to take you on, working 3 days a week as an office manager. And I often think, and I've had quite a lot of clients do it, that people who are really good organisational wise, really good on doing a bit of techie stuff and everything, you've got a load of small practices like accountants and sort of one person businesses, and they really could just do with an office manager just to organise them and sort things out, maybe not necessarily doing the finance. And that's a role that quite a few people that I've worked with have moved on to. So it's finding your little niche and just trying to fit in with that.
Okay. So, thank you very much. As a final sign-off, we'll just acknowledge that you've tipped 60 and a few years. You have become a doctor. You have written lots of books. You bought a wood.
Yeah.
Seems to be an important part of the life story. She bought a wood. You've been to Kathmandu. What's next? What are you gonna do next, Denise? What does the next chapter hold?
Okay. 13 weeks today, I get ready to fly to Kenya. And you know the Maasai warriors, and we read about them and we see them on the telly. Well, they've got women who don't get as... Nobody's that interested in their story. So I'm going to spend 2 weeks living in a tribe with the Maasai women. I've got to take my own tent, my own sleeping bag, my own toilet paper. And I'm going to spend 11 nights with them, with 7 other women. And we are there to live the life of a Maasai warriors woman, of the different ages. And I have no idea, absolutely, what I'm going to be letting myself in for. But if I don't do it now, when will I? And that ties in with, this was the book aimed at approaching retirement and just getting into it. But my next book is around elderhood and about being the wise elder. And the thought of being able to sit down and drink tea with some Maasai women, older women, and talk to them about what life is like, will be inspirational. It's something that I'm never going to get if I just read academic papers. So yeah, that is what's next. Plus a management plan for my wood.
Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of the Q&As. Thank you so much. I believe there are refreshments, there are books available, and obviously you can all come and have a chat with Denise and congratulate her on her achievements. So I think we'd like to finish the evening in the traditional way with a round of applause. Thank you, Denise.
And thank you so much for coming. I said it was going to be simple food. I was going to actually start chopping things up myself, and then it's like Marks and Spencer's. So there's some sandwiches at the back, and there's a cake. Do have a look at the cake first of all, because it's like from Asda, and it's got the book cover on. And it's just like I saw somebody else did it, and it's like, wow, I want one of those. So do help yourself to some sandwiches. I'm going to put some music back on, have some cake. If you'd like a book, as I said, this isn't here me like selling all my books, but you're very welcome to buy one if you would. And do stay and chat, and I'll put some more music on.
Man, that's breath.